London Live now. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that one man was responsible for the Brexit vote. As UK Independence Party, UKIP co-founder and leader, it was Nigel Farage who finally got then British Tory Prime Minister David Cameron to blink and call a long-promised referendum. The rest, they say, is history. Today, Nigel Farage is doing many things. He's an occasional advisor to Donald Trump. He's even got his own TV show. But as the Brexit negotiations wobble with growing fears of a no deal and even calls for yet another referendum, would Nigel Farage even consider a comeback? Well, he's certainly coming over to Australia in September, so I thought we'd catch him ahead of that trip. Joining me live now from London, Nigel Farage, an early welcome to Australia. Please tell us, we need help.
Thank you.
Where are we going with Brexit?
Well, it's very interesting, isn't it? I mean, Brexit was the first wave of this populist revolt that is now sweeping across many Western countries. You know, Brexit first, then Trump, now there's a new, very radical Italian government. Difficulty is that Brexit was a vote of the people to say we don't want to be run by a globalist elite. We want to run our own country, control our own borders and be a normal nation. Difficulty is that our political class in Westminster still don't agree with that vote, and they're trying to delay it, dilute it, or even scrap it. So, you know, it's interesting. In some ways, winning the referendum was like winning the war, but we now have to win the peace, and I do fear there are some further big battles to be fought.
So I'm just seeing the commentary with so many, with the way the deal that Theresa May, the Prime Minister, is trying to do. We've got the Foreign Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, Mark Carney, the Governor of the Bank of England, Liam Fox, the International Trade Secretary. They're all calling this option of a no deal as more and more likely. Is that your preferred option now?
Look, there's no such thing as a no deal. We have something called the World Trade Organization, and, you know, that is a rules-based system for how global trade operates. So there's no such thing as a no deal. You know, either we have a trade deal, a specific trade deal with the EU, or we trade with them on WTO terms. The important thing to remember about Brexit is it was a vote for independence. It was a vote for us to become a self-governing nation, which means we do not accept laws that are made by bureaucrats in Brussels. So, in many ways, whatever deal we get is secondary, provided we get back control of our country, and that is what people voted for.
Right, OK. So that is very much on the governance side of things. But if we do have the no deal, the WTO rules option, there will be an economic shock in Britain, but will Britain survive? I mean, we are very interested in Australia doing an FTA directly with Britain. Is Britain going to be able to survive? And what is it going to cost Britain if there is no deal or no trade with Europe?
Well, let's get a sense of perspective on this. The Eurozone accounts for 15% of the global economy. Catch it, bitch! And because we're members of the European Union, we're tied to their regulations, their rules, and we are banned, forbidden from making our own trade deals with countries with whom we have much closer links, like Australia. So the fact of it is, breaking free of Brussels control opens us up to the whole world. Do not think that the Brexit vote was a protectionist vote. Do not think the Brexit vote was pulling up the drawbridge. The Brexit vote was saying goodbye to being run by a bunch of old men in Brussels and hello to the rest of the world. And, you know, whenever you get a major change, there might be some short-term dislocation. Long-term, I'm certain that politically and economically, it's the right thing for us to do.
So, for example, when Airbus and other businesses have threatened to move manufacturing out of Britain if there's a no deal or a loss of free access to the single market, I mean, do you think these threats are real? And indeed, do you agree with Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson when he allegedly said F business to all this?
Look, let's be clear. Airbus, for example, is a political company. It has been given billions and billions of euros by European taxpayers through the European Union. And you know something? Airbus and others said 20 years ago, if Britain doesn't join the euro, we'll leave the country. It wasn't true then. It's not true now. Boris Johnson's language is well, shall we say colourful, but what he was saying was not F business in its entirety, but F big businesses playing political games. Look, let's be clear. The Goldman Sachs, the giant multinationals, love the European Union because they love being able to write the rules for their own industry to the detriment of small and medium-sized businesses. Okay. I believe in capitalism, not in global corporatism.
Gotcha, bitch!
Nigel, we've had various polls, I think including a Sky one recently, that suggested another referendum would find more people wanting to remain. What would happen if the government suddenly decided there should be another referendum, do you think? What would you do?
Uproar in Middle England, the likes of which we have not seen in modern times. Look, we voted to leave despite having the whole world telling us not to do it. President Obama, you know, all the big companies promising us poverty, misery, almost plagues of black locusts would descend upon our country. Despite that, we voted to leave. And if we're now forced to vote again, I think you will see a real upset in this country, the likes of which we haven't seen before. And I tell you something, if the Brits are asked to do this again, they will get very bloody-minded and will vote to leave by a much bigger margin.
Right. Now, very interestingly, The Spectator magazine recently had a front page with you on the cover announcing that UKIP is well and truly back. I think there's talk about maybe 3,000 members joining up in recent months, perhaps as a result of Theresa May's Chequers deal, announcing her negotiating position. Now, is UKIP rising from the dead? I think we've got a cartoon there. Yeah, we've got it.
Oh yeah, look, you know, I mean, I'm always good for a cartoon, obviously. Let's be clear. Let's be clear. You know, the reason that UKIP appeared to fall off a cliff in terms of its support is because we won. I mean, you could argue that UKIP has been the most successful political party in the history of British politics. We set out to do something that we were told was totally impossible, and we succeeded. UKIP is up in the polls. Public discontent with mainstream politics has never been greater. And you know, if Brexit was an earthquake in British politics, I promise you, if we're asked to vote again, there'll be another earthquake, and it could be even bigger.
So, if you were asked, or Britain was asked to vote again, what is your current situation anyway? You've got the media show, you're Speaker in America. Will you throw your hat in the ring for UKIP leader when Gerard Batten's one-year term ends early next year?
Well, remember one thing, I'm still a member of the European Parliament, amongst that long list of things that I'm doing.
Yes.
I still lead a group in the European Parliament, so I'm still involved actively in politics. I've been less involved in the front line of British politics. All I can say at this stage is, you know, I will seriously consider in March, if the Brexit ball has been dropped in the way that it appears it is, I will seriously consider coming back and having a go at being UKIP leader again. And failing that, you know, I'll be out there campaigning. Let's wait and see what shape this takes. What I will tell you is I will not stand idly by and see the wishes of 17.4 million people in the greatest exercise in the history of British democracy swept aside. I will not allow that to happen.
So, Nigel, that could involve an option where you would restart a different party.
It could involve 100 different options. Starting new parties is somewhat unlikely. Believe you me, it's a very, very difficult thing to do. And, you know, this idea that Brexit was some sort of huge overnight success, hey, I've been working at that for over 20 years. So UKIP is still a viable political vehicle.
What about the fate of the Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson? Do you see him leading the government, possibly? I mean, obviously, we've got the front page of the Telegraph today, this burqa debate, and the sort of tensions again with the Prime Minister. Where do you see Boris Johnson going?
Well, Boris Johnson is, of course, a very colourful figure, one of the few political figures in Britain these days that, you know, the average man and woman in the street could recognise, because the rest of them are so dull, they're not really very memorable. Boris, of course, says things that people in Westminster, inside the sort of village here, think are unacceptable. So he's basically said he doesn't support a burqa ban, but he thinks women wearing burqas look rather like letterboxes. Well, you know, as I say, everyone's outraged. The Prime Minister's outraged. He's being forced to apologise. But I promise you, go out and meet people living in Middle England and ask them whether they're comfortable seeing people walking down their high streets wearing burqas, and they will tell you they feel uncomfortable, they don't feel it fits in with our tradition. So I'm saying right now to Boris, don't apologise, don't back off, show the public that you're afraid, unafraid of political correctness, and you will stand up and say what you think. And my view is if he does that, he's got quite a good chance of becoming Prime Minister by Christmas. And if that happens, do you know something? We might just get Brexit back on track.
Donald Trump. Nigel, now you've been close to the president. How do you see his trade wars? Do you see it as protectionism, or do you see it as resetting trade negotiations from America?
Trump is a remarkable figure. You know, he called out the European Union for their total hypocrisy. They put much bigger tariffs on American products than the other way round. He threatened to put big tariffs on German motor cars. The whole world screamed, Trump's a protectionist, and within a fortnight, Mr. Juncker, the European Commission President, had been bundled onto an aeroplane by the big industrial lobby in Germany, went to the White House, and now there's talk of a tariff-free deal between the European Union and America on manufactured goods.
Yes.
Trump is an operator. Trump is a dealer. Don't underestimate Donald Trump. The effect of Trump's trade wars with Europe is it looks like we're going to get freer trade. And can I just say this? For all the mockery that Trump gets, compare his popularity ratings with all the other Western world leaders. He's doing a great job.
Briefly, you're coming out to Australia and New Zealand at the start of September on a speaking tour. What are we to expect from Nigel Farage?
Oh, I'm going to tell people how the populist revolution began. Brexit was the first, brick out of the wall. I will explain to people that it doesn't matter where you go. If the establishment get complacent, if they're out of touch with mainstream opinion, the political revolutions that we've seen in France and Italy and Britain and America could happen in your country too. But I'll also tell people about my battle against the establishment, about the number of times I've been fined and banned and kicked out of places. So it's a serious political tale, but I will tell a big personal side of what it's like taking on big government.
Nigel Farage, it's so interesting to chat with you. Thank you very much for some time in your day. Thank you, sir.